Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tekkel Talk Show live. It's again, slightly out of our normal time zone, but who would have thought that load shedding would have disrupted our program so much? So we really hope there's a few viewers online. Beric, good evening to you. Nice to have you back
Yes.
in your usual attire.
Ja, dis die eerste MP's, né? Ja, nee, pas nog hy nie. Die speel nie. Hy pas nog. So ek is dit te baie. Ja, nee, kyk, ons kan baie goed blameer op load shedding. Almal is affekteer dit. So yeah, it's one of those things we've been put all over the place. Yeah, we've had to move guests around, we've had to move time slots, etc., etc. But yeah, look, it's one of those things I think we'd have to get used to, and just adapting to it. I think that's the only thing we can do. So yeah, lekker to be here.
No, for sure. And normally we start the show around about 8 o'clock. But as explained, we didn't want to just postpone the show or just move the show to another day. So we just moved it by about 40 minutes. So we know we are 40 minutes late, but we're going to just have a brief chat about a few stuff. Obviously, chatting about the prospects of a Springbok side going on the end of year tour. We'll speak a little bit about the English Premier League, our Proteas, they are in action in the T20 World Cup. And then we will also give our opinion about, what we think the Proteas need to do to, I would say, would I say to go better than the expectations and defeat those, they call it chokers. But I think hopefully this time around they'll perhaps change the perception of many out there and go all the way to win the title.
Yeah, there's also hope elke keer. I think we always are hoping by every World Cup that tag can be shaken off. But yeah, you see that tag just goes along with every World Cup, with every tournament. It just goes with us. So yes, it has to give somewhere. Ek bedoel, today there's a big shock, and we'll talk about it later in the show. But today was a big shock with Pakistan losing against them.
Yeah,
massive upset. Totally. I mean, the fans were shocked. It was a brilliant game to watch. Low scoring game, but a fantastic game to watch. But yeah, so anybody, it's T20, anybody can win. So even though the Proteas might not have gelled totally just yet. But maybe the shorter format does suit them a bit more.
Yeah, no, for sure. We know it's T20, and like Zimbabwe showed, if you arrive on the day, even defending a very average total, they really went out and bowled well. So if on the day, if you have 3-4 good moments in the game, you have 1-2 standout performers on the day, you can really put the opponents under the thumb. And I think, like you said, we have the game breakers in the Protea side. It's just a question of, when one of them fail, that the other one stand up on the day. Yeah. So hopefully they can really go and prove themselves, go get through the pool phases and make sure that they get the momentum going into the knockout stages of the competition. So we are all gunning for them. We'll have a brief chat about that later on. But get your comments in. Who do you think, is the key players for the Proteas? Who do we bank on? We've seen Quentin de Kock come good today. He's been out of the runs for quite some time. Riley Rousseau also getting into the runs. So who do you think would be that player that we need as a Protea side to fire and make sure that they bring their A game, match in and match out to get this Proteas over the line?
Yeah, it's going to be. I think that's what tonight's show was about. The big question was who will make the cut, and I think not only like with any sport, not only with the Proteas team, but if you're looking at, we'll touch on the Premier League, we'll touch a bit on the URC as well. Who's making the cut? Who will be the one that will be making the BOK team, for example, that will face, be that big match against the world's #1 team, Ireland. So yeah, that's what the show is about tonight. And yeah, guys, if you are, going to be saying something tonight is it, please let us know.
Yeah, I know for sure. And like Beric is saying, tonight we're going to touch on a few sensitive things. And obviously your team might just be one of those teams that we cut and we say we don't think that those teams will make the cut. But before we get into the local sports, let's have just a sneak peek at the English Premier League. And it's difficult reading if you are one of the usual teams that dominate this competition. We know Manchester City, they've been very much dominant the last few years. They're still there, much in striking distance, but it's Arsenal leading the way. Let's hope that Arsenal have the steam to keep up the momentum, but Arsenal leading the way. I still back Manchester City, perhaps to be, I would say, leading this pack of heavyweight teams, especially in the top 5, top 6, going into Christmas. But we never know with Arsenal if Arteta and his team can just keep it going, keep things together. Who knows? They can really sit at the top and put the pressure on Manchester City.
Doesn't that put into perspective that win that Liverpool had over Man City? I mean, to keep Man City at bay for as long as possible. Look, they're gonna, we always had it. They're gonna pull away at some point. But Arsenal is still good for now. They're keeping strong at the moment. They've got some. Obviously, they've got some very good wins behind them so far, and they're leading the pack. Full worthy of that position. But yeah, Man City. Obviously, you always get the feeling that Arsenal might just lose. They lose a bit of wind as they head into the last stretch. But I'm sure Furlow won't agree with that. But it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the teams can catch up. What's the chances, Aini, of a Liverpool? And I've been listening, to commentary over the last few weeks. I mean, you have guys like Fulham showing themselves above Liverpool. And in the English Premier League, there's, for Man fans and Liverpool fans, there's only 2 teams in their tournament, and it's the 2 of them. But being so far behind, being 12 points adrift of Arsenal right now, there were talks that it's probably the furthest that any team would, if they would want to win. No team has done it from so far back. Do you think that's possible? They've lost some very bad games. Looking at Nottingham Forest the weekend past, do you think there's a possibility that they will catch up?
To catch up to win the title?
Yeah.
There's no chance. There's no chance that Liverpool will win the title. I think that even last night it took even a little bit of a further dip as they progressed to the last 16 in the UEFA Champions League. I don't think Liverpool has got the squad of players to rotate between the competitions. I think the best that they can perhaps aim is to get into their top 4 positions. There is absolutely no chance that Liverpool will be in the title race, hunting down the likes of Manchester City and Arsenal this season. I think they've been too inconsistent, and the fact that they are in 8th position, they can count themselves very lucky. Perhaps we can point out the results between Chelsea and Manchester United over the weekend. Those 2 teams sharing the spoils. Tottenham getting slightly off the boil, and then obviously that keeps Liverpool slightly in, I would say, touching distance of the top 4. They should have been. They should have been much further adrift. If you look at their performances, especially in the Premier League, they should have been much further back. Looking at that log, even with Manchester United showing a improved performance, they still only remain 4 points behind Manchester United. And that is nothing to do with Liverpool's performance at all. They've been atrocious, very inconsistent. I think it's just been much of the results going Liverpool's way. They making sure that City didn't get away by beating Manchester City and then the next week losing against Forest. It just sums up Liverpool's season. For me. But I don't think they're in the title race this season, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, for sure. And looking at Man United, they've definitely had a big. They've also had their ups and downs. Yeah, 1 week they're playing brilliant football, and next week they're not doing so well. There's definitely a revival happening within Man United, and with that said, the talks of the big talks about Ronaldo and his future at Man United. Do you think that hampers the way the rest of the team is gelling at the moment, or is that just a side story that nobody's going to really care about?
No, I think certainly the strange thing about the Ronaldo topic is that he plays in a position where I feel in the Manchester United setup he should actually just walk into that side. I cannot understand how a guy, even with the attitude problem, he plays in a position where they are struggling to get a recognized world beater in that position. Yes, they've played Anthony Martial, they've played Marcus Rashford, but I think Ronaldo should, on any day, should make
Oh
the
yeah.
starting lineup. And I think that is perhaps one of the frustrations. But we've also seen Ronaldo doing things slightly out of team spirit, out of character, by not being as available to come up onto the field in the last few minutes when called upon. He also left the substitutions bench a little bit earlier, and that also, plays a big role. And a lot of people now saying, isn't he toxic to the squad? You have a guy like Ronaldo, you have a manager like Erik ten Hag. It shouldn't be difficult for Erik to manage this guy. But in my opinion, I think Ten Hag is getting his selection wrong, and that is adding to the problems with Ronaldo. You don't want a guy like that sitting on a bench for 3-4 consecutive weeks. He came on in a match against Everton, scored a brilliant goal. You can see he seems to be frustrated, but I do believe that the Manchester United side with Ronaldo in their starting lineup should be a better side than the side they're fielding at present.
Oh, for sure. And then looking at, I mean, a team that it's always just bubbling under. They always in the top half of the table, but they never just never really seen as favorites, outright favorites is Tottenham. With them being around, I mean, they had a draw this week, and this big talk about Harry Kane's goal was disallowed, etc., etc. There's also the Tottenham Hotspur is bubbling also under. Why are we not talking with them in the same breath as a Man United or a Manchester City when they're always bubbling under?
No, I think it's consistency. I was surprised when they lost against United. I think they actually lost that game quite comfortably. I was quite surprised with how Manchester United went out and dominated this team. The further risk is we know that if a guy like Harry Kane in the Tottenham setup gets injured, they are left quite stranded in that position. So it's all about, I think it's depth. They are going to struggle now. I think they're perhaps going to make the last 16 of the Champions League by just a whisker. Where I thought if you looked at their group, they should have actually, comfortably gone into the last 16. They're still waiting on the last game to determine whether they do go through. So it's a lot of factors. And if you look at their team setup, you have Lloris going to the World Cup for France. You have Harry Kane being the captain for England going into the World Cup. And so do you have key players all around the pitch. And I think the coaching staff of Tottenham would probably be hoping that those guys do not get injured. They just don't have the depth, I believe, to really run the race with the bigger units. But again, it's all about being in a good space in good periods of this competition. And we know over the Christmas period, we normally see a lot of movement on this log. So let's hope it's movement in the right direction for many of these teams. A team that I just want to touch on is playing great soccer at the moment is Newcastle United. I think a lot of people thought they're going to buy some of the big names when they were I would say, taken over by new owners. They didn't spend a lot of money, but they spend wisely, and they have good players all around the pitch, and they look like a very, very gelled and very well coached side. And that obviously the reason why they are placed very, very well at the moment in 4th position. And Newcastle, perhaps not. Perhaps they will not qualify for the Champions League spots, but they are still going to beat a few very, very big teams in this season. That is my prediction. Great side, good players, and so far playing wonderful soccer.
I'm sure big things ahead for Newcastle. Annie, looking towards this weekend's fixtures, what is your pick of the weekend?
I think my pick of the weekend will certainly be the game between Chelsea, where I can't see it now. Chelsea, there it is. The fixture between Chelsea and Brighton, really it draws my attention. The reason for that is we know that Potter coaching Chelsea now, used to be the coach for Brighton. I think this is a fixture that I'm really looking forward to. I think Brighton is playing brilliant soccer. Chelsea indifferent soccer, but from a footballing fanatic, I'm really looking forward to see how Brighton go against the team now being coached by their former coach. So that for me, certainly a great game. The main fixture on the cards would be Manchester United versus West Ham. I think in the form that United is, that they should win that game. However, again, they've been very indifferent. So West Ham would probably chance their arm. I'm backing Manchester City and Arsenal to win their fixtures. I'm saying Arsenal to win their fixtures. Nottingham Forest would have heaps of confidence after beating Liverpool. But I'm still backing the two first number 1 and number 2 sides in Manchester City and Arsenal to win their fixtures. But for me, the pick certainly would be Brighton versus Chelsea. It's not your normal derby, but if you look in the bigger frame of things, Chelsea would want to stay in the run for their top 4 positions, and then obviously stay in the hunt for the title charge later in the season. Brighton on great form, a lot of confidence. They have guys like Trossard playing wonderful soccer, and I'm looking forward to this fixture. Looking at my team, Liverpool against Leeds. Seeing is believing. I'm not predicting anything for Liverpool until they become much more consistent.
Yeah, what a difference a year makes, eh? But with that said, what is looking at the games, and it's pretty. I mean, you've made it very clear that the teams like Man City should go through, etc. The big names. If there's any shocker of these games, what would it be for you? What would be an upset for you? A possible upset, sorry, for you.
I think Aston Villa without a coach now, or they've now announced that they've got a new coach. They fired Steven Gerrard, and they've now announced a former Arsenal coach, Emery, that will take over. But that will only be at the later stage. I'm eyeing that game, and I've seen Aston Villa play over the weekend. I think they had a 4-0 victory. So I think Aston Villa perhaps with an outside chance to upset Newcastle for sure. I do believe that if Liverpool go on and they keep up their habit to concede for goals or be the first team to concede, they might just be in trouble against Leeds. But I'm backing Liverpool to win that one. I don't see any upsets, Alberic, apart from the possibility of Aston Villa beating Newcastle. I think if Brighton do come close against Chelsea, I think they would be chuffed to just get a draw out of that fixture. But the one game that I'm thinking that Aston Villa in the bottom part of the log, perhaps upsetting the 4th place Newcastle United. Further on, I believe City to beat Leicester and beat them comfortably. Leicester has seen a revival, but I think Manchester City will just be too strong. Tottenham to beat Bournemouth, and then I believe that Manchester United would probably be a goal better than West Ham in the last fixture of the weekend.
Clearly, there's no Brentford or Wolverhampton fans in here, because I'm sure that people would have been talking about that game also being in the bottom of the log. But yeah, it's a jam-packed weekend of football. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The fact that you mentioned Chelsea and Brighton, I mean, those are two kind of, they play in the top of the log, top half of the log. And there'll definitely be some movement, come a result from that game. So yeah, I definitely see some shifting on the log, possibly after this game, after that game at least. Heine, just looking towards the rest of the season, we spoke just now about the fact that last night Liverpool won. They through to the last 16. The rest of the teams have made a mark. Barcelona has fallen out by the wayside. Who do you think will end up in the top 4 possibly towards the end of the UEFA Champions League?
Of the Champions League, I'm pretty sure that depending on how the draw now goes, that would be interesting. I'm pretty sure if Pep and Manchester City, if they don't get it this season with Haaland in the form, I think they've had a good run in. I think City would certainly be. you're talking about the last four. I'm going to give City to be in the final. I think Manchester City, they really become unstoppable. But they have that one game in playoffs where they just dip off.
Yeah.
But I think Manchester City is certainly one of the teams that I believe should be there. I think a team like Real Madrid has really been a revival. I think they might be, they know how to play final soccer, Derek, and I think their repertoire. Then obviously the team that has been very, very dominant, and I'm hoping that we don't see them playing each other. City, I think Bayern Munich, Manchester City final perhaps, but they will be one of the top four. And then my heart says that Liverpool would be there, but my mind just say PSG to be the fourth side. I think those are the four teams that I think would be very difficult to beat. I'm not saying that they are certainty for the semi-final, all depending on how it crosses. But I think Chelsea, perhaps with the outside chance, but Tottenham, Liverpool, Chelsea, I think it's going to be a bridge too far for those English teams. The one that England would probably be backing to go right through to the final. And perhaps now, with Haaland on form firing, perhaps now it is Pep Guardiola's turn to lift that UEFA Champions League title. So my top four, depending on how the draw now pans out, remember there's still a game. Liverpool can still end up winning their pool if they beat Napoli with a goal difference. Tottenham can still drop out. So, there's still a lot of things that can happen in terms of the draw for the last 16. But my final four, Manchester City, PSG, Bayern Munich, and Real Madrid.
Big names, big massive names. Anyway, and just with that said, I mean, we got to let everybody know we are looking at doing for the World Cup, doing a Super Brew pool. So it'll be interesting to go up against all of the Têkkellers soos hulle nou 'n paar weke terug.
Têkkeller footballers.
Yeah,
so they must just stay tuned. We will just alert them how that pool will work. As nou nie ons steek by die Super Brew storie nie. Ons is nog nie so lekker.
Nee,
we'll give it a shot.
Praat vir jouself. Okay, praat vir jouself. Ek het jou geklop 2 keer in 'n ry. Ek is happy.
They's happy. 2 years in a row, you just have the better of me, so you have the bragging rights. I'm not sure how many people are online, but keep the comments coming, and we will probably flag some of the comments if we do have time. But just let's pop in with the URC, Alberic. It's been a last season. We still had to get used to watching this competition, getting used to it, and then also our teams needed to get into the thick of things. But it seems to us they have acclimatized, and if you look at the log, it doesn't make for very bad reading at all for South African-based sides at all.
No, compared to last year, this is gold. I mean, the fact that last year we started horribly. I think in the first 6 or 7 rounds, our teams were languishing at the bottom. But like you said, I mean, you're getting used to the teams now. You're understanding, who are the strong teams. You don't compare to Super Rugby. Okay, you're playing this week. You're playing the Crusaders, which in Leinster, for example, one of the top teams. You're going up against Ulster, which is like the Wellington side. I'm just using that as an example now, but you're getting to know that, and you get the weaker side that you would almost say, the guys, the Scarlets and Zebra and those guys at the bottom. But with that said, South African teams have started very well. They tours overseas the last few weeks went okay. I think it was much better than before. Storm was coming away with it, I think, with draw and loss and a win, which isn't a bad return. But obviously there was obviously big losses for the Bulls as well. I mean, considering the fact that they did go over and they went with a strong team as well. But yet, not a bad showing at all. I mean, to have all our teams in the top 8 of the tournament, I think it's a good starting point compared to last year.
Yeah, no, we're looking forward to the fixtures this weekend because we'll see a few derby games being played between South African franchises, and there we have it. We've got the Lions at home against the Stormers, and then for me, obviously, being the pick of the weekend, I think the Bulls and the Sharks. still still the pack leaders in terms of where the South African franchises would want to go in future. This fixture very, very important for both sides. The Sharks might still be feeling that they might be undercooked now, especially with the fact that their game over the weekend did not come off. There's still some confusion. I believe Ulster the players were slightly ill, but that game didn't take place. But the Bulls, still, Barry, the Bulls very indifferent in this competition. I would have thought that perhaps they would be the number one side, but now we've seen the Stormers doing very, very well and be much more consistent. Even in the rain the last weekend, I think the Stormers could really keep their head high. They were very, very good in certain areas. But in contrast, the Bulls, it seems to me that they are still looking for those X factor players to come and really take the game by the scruff of the neck. They are playing indifferent football or indifferent rugby at the moment.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think I find it strange, man. I've been following the news in Pretoria and also in Durban, just with regards to teams. There's a lot of talk about even starting up and starting for the Sharks, etc. And he had a massive game in his first game in the black jumper for the Sharks. So the consistency, I feel, there hasn't been there. And maybe it's a rotation thing. In terms of player selection, there's a lot of. I mean, these teams boast some of SA's best players on paper. And with that said, the results haven't matched it always. And whether it's a case of players being rested for the Boks, etc., that remains to be seen if that was the reason behind it. But at the same time, these are the two kind of I would almost want to say the money teams in terms of the the backing they're getting and the type of players they have. So this fixture is pretty big for these two. For the sake of just the fact that they want to kind of post which franchise is the best under which system. I would think, but yeah, you look down towards Ellis Park and you see Lions and Stormers. Stormers have got a lot to lose going up against the Lions on Ellis Park. But again, the Lions boasting some young players that are really turning it on. Some nice backline players that are making a difference and really showing that they also want to be accounted for. So some brilliant games lined up, and definitely looking forward to both these games over the weekend.
Oh, for sure, and obviously, I'm sure that some of the Springbok coaching staff would be following these fixtures, but also the URC Championship as a whole. There's been a lot of guys, I would say, let's call them outside of the normal Springbok squad, putting up their hands, making sure that they are noticed, and especially some of them in positions where we now know there is a bit of a need. So, our heading said, who will make the cut? And I'm pretty sure Nina Haber and his coaching staff would look to players, especially players playing in positions where they now know, listen, a guy like a Dwayne Vermeulen, how long will he still play? Who's the successor? Who will be taking over, or who will be shadowing a guy like Andre Pollard? Who do we select in the absence of a Lucanio Am? And those are the players now at the different franchises that needs to put up their hand. And I would be really, really surprised if we don't see a few surprise selections for the end of the year tour, even if it is selections that really goes beyond some expectations, but making sure that there's a contingency plan going into the World Cup, but even post-World Cup, that we have youngsters coming through, especially now with some of the youngsters putting up their hand in the URC, and I'm really impressed with some of the players that is coming through.
Yeah, there's some fantastic talent. Big up to again. I might be biased with some Stormers, but Mani being selected this week, Evan was also being called up. I think there was a third player from Evan and Mani, and Sasha in Mazulu that was called up to the Springboks. They deserve it. They deserve it full out, all and out. They deserve to be in that Springbok squad at least. And it's good to see talent being recognized. The big talking point for us was always over the last year, and we're still getting to see it. And we have chats on WhatsApp, and we want you guys also to let us know what you guys think. That quality of rugby that we talk about, the quality of having, playing the likes of Leinster and Munster and the lesser stronger teams, we can call it that, like Zebra. How does that impact our rugby? We've been getting some. I think the Stormers are playing some brilliant rugby at the moment, just in terms of how they're gelling at the moment. Sharks finding their feet with all these big name players, and same with the Bulls. But how do it's just, where do we see the results of this? After the first year, we won the Rugby Championship as South Africans. We won the tournament. But how well do you see, or let me put it this way, how do you see this influencing our rugby? Do you think it's for the good or for the bad or for the worse?
The URC, it's very, very difficult to call. I'm really on the fence with this one. I'm following the competition. I'm not only watching the South African sides, I'm also trying to catch up when some of the other teams play. I can tell you some of the basic skills. Some of the standards are very low.
Yeah.
Especially the basic rugby play, kicking for touch, making sure you play for territory, making sure that when you do get a penalty, that you take the place kick, that you at least get the 3 points. Those types of stuff, I think, very indifferent. It's going to be a whole different picture when the top teams go into the Heineken Cup, because then obviously you get much closer to the test match field. I think the players that would certainly benefit is the players that had less exposure to European conditions. I watched the Stormers game over the weekend, and it was absolutely coming down at some, it was really raining very hard, and it was good to see a guy like Mani and the other players trying to play the wet game. I think, in some instances we saw the Stormers can really adapt, and they played well. So it's really a mixed bag. I think in some instances it would benefit the players individually. I am concerned when we do need to select a side to play test match rugby. Who is that side now? Do you mix it up with Damien Delaney playing there, with Sia Khaleesi now with the Sharks? We have a guy now, all of a sudden I've heard a guy like Dylan Leitz also being looked at now to perhaps come back into the squad. And then we have some of the youngsters playing in the URC. So the trick would be now, especially spreading your footprint of players globally. It becomes a little bit more tricky to select that starting 15 with your 23 man, with your reserves. So that for me, it's going to be the trick. I believe that the Springboks were slightly better off playing in the Super Rugby, because then they could really, I would say, keep their thumb on New Zealand. But also, similarly, New Zealand is also losing some ground now with us being pulled out of that competition. So, 6 of the one, half a dozen of the other. I'm enjoying this competition here, Barry. Just sometimes I'm watching a game and I'm thinking, but is die manne out and out pros, of het hulle nog 'n dagwerkie wat hulle gewoon so maar klaar gewerk het en dan stap hulle in 'n spanne. Sommige van die spanne lyk vir my so, die ouens het nog gewerk en hulle is nie heeltemal professionele spelers nie. And it's nothing, it's just my observation. Obviously we know the South African franchises, they are professional, but if you look at Zebra, sometimes the Scarlets, you think, yes, surely, these guys are, they are not pro. I might be wrong, but
no. Look, we want the show to go international, but let's hope it doesn't go as far as Italy for now. Don't let to come and boycott us. But
having said that, a lot of those Argentine, Italian franchises, you would see their players playing in the bigger franchises in Europe. Yes. So you would see one of their two play, maybe perhaps a guy playing in Leinster, a guy playing for Munster or Ulster. So we fully understand that those smaller nations, they would not necessarily have their best players. And when they do select a test squad, it might be one of La Rochelle, one of Toulon, a player from South Africa. So we know that they can select a top test side. But I feel sometimes their franchise rugby, they need to try and get more South Africans or New Zealand guys in to strengthen their franchise rugby a little bit more.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm also on the fence with the URC. I do like the fact that, we're all getting a different taste of the rugby. There was a lot of talk about, every year we lost against, the Super 12. The reality is the All Blacks dominated that tournament so well over there since Super Rugby started. And it's good for us to kind of show ourselves against the European teams. This, however, and to your point, the URC is not the top tier of European Championship, and for us, this for us to win, I would to qualify. Let's call it to be worthy of facing the Saracens, the London Irish, the Cell Shocks, the La Rochelles, the Toulons. For us to be in that league, we'd at least have to win this competition. We at least have to say like, look, we'll put our hand up and we'll win, and which we've done brilliantly last year on our first go. But with that said, there was moments in the rugby championship, some of the games where the basic skills was not there, man, and there were a lot of stop-start moments. Referees don't let the game flow as it used to be, as we were accustomed to in Super Rugby. So you have a lot of stop-start affairs, stuff being blown up for. There is some refs that do try, but it's a stop-start affair, and there's a lot of errors. Maybe it's the conditions, the fact that it's mainly wet in the European side of the world. But it's good to see this, teams shifting the ball. I mean, there was moments that the Sharks did it, the Stormers did it, shifting the ball to the wings and showing that, I would almost say the Southern Hemisphere kind of style of rugby that kind of blew them apart. And I think the Stormers have shown that a lot so far, not being afraid to throw the ball and swing the ball around. And that shows a bit of a glimpse of what we had, learned over the years in Super Rugby. But let's see. I think it remains to be seen how it will affect our quality. If it does, and to the rugby bosses of our country, if this does work for us, then we should be seeing more players from the United Rugby Championship in the POC team. If they believe that this tournament is the way forward for our rugby or the European setup, then they should be putting more faith in our players that are based in South Africa, that are playing in the URC, and they should be backing those players. It shouldn't be a case of the third tier of the third best fly-off being injured, and now we're looking at each other. Okay, we're not going to go to the URC. Let's rather put the utility back in fly-off. You know what I'm saying? So that trust should be shown. So if SA Rugby is backing backing themselves to be in the URC, then they should be backing the players as well, because these guys are putting their hearts out on every weekend.
No, for sure. Like I said, we are really looking forward to this weekend's fixtures. We very seldomly in this competition now we will see our own teams playing against each other. They're just a glimpse. There they are. We'll see the Lions play the Stormers. Still think that.
What is your pick on the spot? What is your pick?
Well, they're playing in Joburg. I think the Stormers has shown that they can really mix it up. I think the Stormers, for me, they've shown that they can play in the drier conditions. They can play the expansive game when needed. I'm very impressed with some of their running rugby when they do get the chance. I think especially with the Stormers' pack of forwards and how they can really go forward. And I believe that the Lions, that is their weakness at the moment. I think the Stormers would beat the Lions. The Stormers would really beat the Lions if they are able to control the game. Make sure that they have ball position, get their team into good areas. We know that the Lions can score from anywhere. But I just think the Lions slightly behind many of the teams or many of the top teams when it comes to their forward play. They're struggling a little bit there. So I'm picking the Stormers to beat the Lions. With the Sharks and the Bulls, very difficult one to call. I think the Sharks, for me, on paper and on form, they have the better side. They have a really complete pack of forwards. They have a good back line. But the Bulls, they play, they lose one, they win one. They lose one, they win one. They've lost over the weekend. They duel again now to come good. Did they lose? No, I think they won. Wasn't it Mornay Steyn kicking them to victory?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it's all about they have a mixed bag of performance. The week prior they lost badly in the Bulls. The Sharks didn't play this weekend. This is a difficult one to call here, Barrick.
Yeah.
I'm thinking home ground advantage, leaning towards the Bulls, but I believe that of all the teams on paper, I think the Sharks has got a very, very complete team, and we haven't seen the best of the Sharks yet. I think the Sharks need to gel, they need to click. Guys like Eben Etzebeth and Sia needs to put up their hand if they want to keep their spot in the Springboks starting lineup. So who knows? Perhaps the Sharks can go to Pretoria and beat the Bulls.
Yeah, my pick's no different. I agree. Well, with the Stormers, I think do have a bit of more. Soos hulle sê in Afrikaans, skiet goed. To one over the Lions in Johannesburg, and then the Bull Sharks again. I would go the Sharks in this one. Reason being because of the fact that they sit with a team that is very, very, very strong on paper, and if the day they gel, and Fassi gets the ball at the right moments, and even Etzebeth is bumping that back up. Then I think there's the Hannah Perev is definitely. I think the Bulls definitely have a tough one against the Sharks. I think in this fixture.
No, for sure. I'm also looking forward to the fixture between the Bulls and the Sharks, especially at scrum time. I think it's two very physical packs, but also both sides. I think a guy like Elrich Low would probably still chance his arm to be on the outside. Let's call it one of the outsiders to make the Springbok side. He's been very unlucky not to have played a little bit more test matches for the Springboks. And then obviously you have also in the Sharks pack the captain himself, but also other players that we believe. I think in general, Eben Etzebeth has been brilliant, but there's been other players, Bongi Mbanambe and those guys that have been slightly off the boil for the last season or so. So they still have a lot to prove. So a lot to look forward to, especially when it comes to the Blue Bulls pack facing off against the Sharks.
And let's just have a quick look at obviously the fixtures for the Boks coming up. And there's some big games. For the Spring. I think this Boks actually have the toughest tour, if I stand corrected, compared to the other Southern Hemisphere teams in terms of the teams they are facing. You got Ireland, which is number 1, France, which is number 2, if I'm not mistaken, in the world.
2 or 3, yeah.
2 or 3, and then also obviously England at the back end of the tour, because England for me the kind of same as the banana peel fixture for me is England, because you end up on the last leg. You've been in Europe for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, and then you have to play a strong England or Twickenham is always a tough one. It can either go either way. But yeah, I think with those fixtures, there's a lot of talking that the Boks need to do on the field.
Yeah, I know for sure, and they're going to be the Springboks either way. Not pointing at any specific fixture, especially the test matches. They are going to need to be on their very, very best to come away here with a clean sheet in terms of results. If they want to come out with, I'm not going to call it a grand slam, but let's call it a clean sheet of not losing to Ireland, France, Italy, or England. Either way, they are going to have to play very, very well. And if they do lose those first two tests, which is a very, very good possibility, because we are talking about two teams, in my opinion, that's going into the World Cup as certain favorites in Ireland and France. They're going to be in big trouble mentally to get victories over Italy and England. So important for the Springboks. They start well. They put down the marker against Ireland. They make sure that they stay in that game and dominate in the areas that they want to dominate. And that game will set the tone. Obviously, the game I'm looking forward to most is the France game, but the game between South Africa and Ireland, that is the one that sets the marker for the rest of the tour. If they lose, and they lose poorly, the Springboks, they are going to be mentally in big trouble. If they do get one over Ireland, I'm pretty sure France, Italy, and England will not be sleeping very well, because we know what a confident Springbok side can do, even on tour in away games.
South Africa has a very good, track record in France even. So, they would definitely want to, history don't always repeat itself. But, with that said, it will be good to start off the tour with a win against the Irish, and then go with some much needed confidence into the France game. We've come over a rugby championship where, yes, we ended up second. It, wasn't bad. We could have won, chased the game, and for the world class team that we supposed to think or supposedly are, we should have at least won that rugby championship. I feel, especially look back at the history of how the whole tournament went down. Sorry, look at the games how the tournament went down. And for example, the games against the All Blacks and South Africa, those are games that you think, yes, if we won that game, we could have actually won the tournament. But going into this will set the marker. Beating Ireland in Ireland, France in France would definitely, show the world. No matter, even if we get to England and we are, what was kind of the back end of the door, it won't be as significant. But we don't, us as South Africans don't need any motivation going up against the English. And I with that said, the two fixtures, Munster and Bristol, is also very important fixtures. Not only for the fact that these are just midweek games, but these are going to possibly be our next in line for the Bok squad in terms of the next generation of stars that will be coming through, or next generation of players that will be taking over where Dwayne finish up, where the Damon, the Islanders, after the next World Cup. Any surprises do you think in that team? Do you think it's a case of Bafana and Sticks choosing a team that's just going to be going and trying to put the team together, barbarian style team, and have all these different players, or do you think it's going to be very strategically done in line for the games against France and England, etc.?
No, I'm really hoping that that they use this fixtures to get into blood youngsters in that they believe should be in this squad. But I've lost some faith in the selection strategy of the Springbok squad in general. I'm not sure. Maybe they are the professionals. But if you look at the Johan Goosen scenario, why would you first select a guy that's been on crutches in the squad, and then he must first declare himself unfit before getting guys like Sasan Gomezulu and Mani Lebok. And I'm using that as an example because that is the frustration. There is no cap as to say you only need 40 players. I fully understand the contingency plan, but to select a player in a position, especially we know Elton, it was quite widely advocated that he will not be considered, which meant that there would be a vacancy, and then they opted not to announce in, let's call it the shadow side. They still selected, Goosen, and we knew that the Jordan Hendrickse, maybe a Sasan Gomezulu, but a certain Mani Lebok should be there. And then we first wait until something, I would say, out of the ordinary happened before we call a guy like a Ivan Ruiz. And that, to me, for me, it slightly it puts me off, especially looking in positions where let's look in the back line, for instance. We know we are struggling with a pure outside center. Who is for me, I'm not seeing a guy that is being blood in and being the next Lucanio Amos. Let's forget about Jesse Kriel. He will not be there in 4 or 5 years' time. I'm guaranteeing he will not be there. We can try and push a guy like Frans Steyn. He's a great squad player, but he will not be there in 3 or 4 years' time. So for me, Alberic, those two fixtures that you pointed out, that is crucial. And for us, yes, we might just only be let's say that couch coaches, but we still sit with our team and we have discussions and we try and figure out the logic, who fits in where and how do we see this long-term working, and that for me is slightly lacking in terms of the holistic approach when it comes to putting together a group of players, especially on a tour like that. And I'm hoping that we will see more of the Henko van Wyks, the Jordan Hendrickses, the Grant Willemses, the Fassies, that they should be there. Even if they don't play a single test match on the tour, that they are part of the squad and make sure that they play that midweek. That's not midweek fixtures, but let's say the non-test match games.
Yeah. But just your point, Annie, I think why should we wait? Jaden got an opportunity, I think, when Faf got injured. Why should we wait on a player, and yes, if your best player starts, if he gets injured, then you choose next best player. But Jaden should have had much more game time over the last year and a bit. You're looking at players like even Roos, for example. He should have had much more game time. Those are players. Aldi Low, you mentioned, should have had much more game time. They should have at least had by now at least 5 or 6 test matches under the belt, coming up for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, and not just the fact of playing your World Cup team. Your World Cup team of 2019 might. There's a few players that are still the core. You still pick Lucanio, you would still pick Cheslin Colby, those players to start. But if we look at the last 2 years, Andre Pollard's been off the cuff. He's totally been off the cuff. A player like Damon has had his good moments, Otto Cold, and there are the few players that have been okay. They haven't been fantastic. They've been okay. However, the younger players from the URC, younger players from even playing over, in overseas leagues, they're putting their hand up and saying, "Look, I want to be counted for." You can actually look what the game time did for a guy like Jasper Visser, for example. Jasper Visser coming up last year, we were like, "Oh, who's this kid? Let's see if he knocks a few balls." No, he's not. Everybody was saying, "Yeah, he's not Dwayne from Maryland, and he's not Dwayne from Maryland." He gets the opportunity. Eventually, Dwayne from Maryland comes back from injury. Puts him again in a big game. I think it was against the Wallabies, very first game after a long injury layoff, and that move totally bombed on Jacques. Now, what would a young player have done in that moment? Not necessarily putting a whole squad of 15 on the field, but having strategically players put into positions, giving them the experience to then make sure that they can build that test. We see like Kerstock. And then we at least know that after end of the year, I've got 5 or 6 or 8 test matches under the belt. I've done a few tours. I'll be able to. That's a valuable experience. Sasha should have been in this, just roaming in the squad a while ago. We shouldn't wait for Eddie Jones to say something like, "Hey, let's see if we can get Sasha," and then we want to pick this kid on the team. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be a knee-jerk reaction. These guys are worthwhile players. They should be there. And I agree with you. Selections weren't that great this season, and that backfired in a lot of games. The bench backfired, on odd occasions. But however, we have to make sure that the young players get the credit, and get, given the opportunity. I think that's all we're looking for. I don't think we want them to be thrown in like that Welsh game, that second test where you just put a whole bunch of new Owens into a team and expect them to win against the Welsh. You put yourself under unnecessary pressure.
No, for sure. But let's hope they do mix it up for the end of the year tour, and hopefully 1 or 2 or even 3 of those youngsters get an opportunity to come through. But we would love to hear your opinion online as well. Drop us a message there on our Facebook page. Who do you think would be one of those youngsters that will come through and perhaps use the end of the year tour to propel their career and be a usual starter? Perhaps not at the World Cup, but we're looking further ahead. We know South Africa Springboks is very conservative with their selections. But who do you think that one player out of the box would be that can add value to the broader squad? We would love to hear your comments on that one. Just before we say goodnight, Alberic, we will obviously have to chat about the Proteas. I'm one of their biggest critiques. Again, indifferent. Proteas blowing hot for now. Certainly, they started very well. Unfortunately, about the one result impacted there by rain. But today, was it earlier this morning or was it? This morning. They really dominant performance, good performance. Key players putting up their hand and making sure that the team gets over the line. And looking back, especially on the Pakistan results now, it's important that the Proteas that they take the points on offer, because we know at any day we can see an upset like Zimbabwe did, and therefore you need to take the points on offer. And I think they started, unlucky with the first game, but a reasonable start, taking into account with the upsets, New Zealand, also Pakistan now, making sure that they now need to battle to get to those playoff games.
100%. Again, Proteas blowing hot, and knocking teams like this should be done. and done well like they did this morning. But yeah, going into the rest of the tournament, whatever points we have to take, they should take. It's a pity about the Zim game. They really, I think they were probably 3 balls away from finishing that game. If the umpires didn't pull them off. But with that said, our question at the beginning of the show of tonight's show was, who makes the cut? And there's been a big talking point about Themba. Themba's, form has been dismal, to say the least, over the last few months, or last few weeks. He did come back from an injury, however, so let's give him that at least. But we know he's a good player. We know he's a fantastic. He's probably one of the few players that has made that transition from the era of when we had the likes of Vernon and Dale Steyn in a team, and he was kind of the younger player. We have one of he being from, and Faf obviously being in that squad. And we have him as one of the stalwarts from that era. However, he's still a young player. He's still a player that can show himself. I think he's probably 1 knock away. I mean, he's 1 knock away, surely.
No, I think Themba is a good player, but I don't think apart from his form, and I've seen a lot of comments, I don't think Themba takes to the captaincy as naturally as I thought he would. I think there's a lot of things in his mind apart from him just needing to get runs. I'm watching the cricket, and I can also see him at times making funny calls in terms of bowling changes. And you can really see, and that's just my opinion. I can see that the captaincy is very taxing on Themba Bavuma. I think perhaps yes, he's a good leader, but I don't think that in the situation where he finds himself now, especially having to battle to keep his spot in the side, also being the captain, I don't think it's helping him a lot. To now relieve him of the captaincy won't happen, but I think there might be a correlation between Themba, the captain, and Themba, what we saw when he just had the freedom to really stabilize the middle order, get a few runs, make sure we get over the line in certain games. Just my opinion. I think there's a lot to think about other than making sure that he cements himself back in the side. He needs to think about a lot of other things. They have selected him now. He is there. I'm not sure that you can leave a guy like him out.
No, I don't think so.
Now he needs to play.
No, I don't think so. And what message do you put out to the rest of the team? I mean, he's your captain, and it's going out. He's out of form. But you look at what happened with Virat over last week's game. Virat has been absolutely poor this last probably year in all formats of the game. He really hasn't put his hand up in any of the games. And against Pakistan in the week, knocking I think it was like a 50 or I don't know how many balls, and he ended up winning the game for India against Pakistan. So that was a big one, and I get the feeling Themba's that 1 knock away from breaking the shackles and making sure that he gets the runs that we know he can get. In the shorter format, there has been talks always. We know that he's got 100 under the belt, or maybe 2 if I'm not mistaken. But in the shorter format, he's always been put to have a better eye for the shorter format than the longer format. So we definitely think, we know that he can deliver. We have put some 1 or 2 knocks before that show that he can do it. So I'm definitely hoping him to come good somewhere in this tournament. Hopefully he does it in the final, guys. Hopefully he does it in the final.
Yeah. And I think he's shown that he plays a very important knock when it really matters. I think perhaps 2 of the players in that batting lineup that I'm always wondering, when will this big knock come, is Aiden Markram and Themba Bavuma at the moment. I think they, with Quinton de Kock slowly starting to find his form. Riley Rousseau, I think, has been in immaculate form. Those players, you can always count on them to chip in with a 20, 30, 40 odd run. But normally, guys like Aiden Markram, guys like Themba Bavuma, they come good in the big games. They really come out and score big runs. Let's hope that this is just a build up to somewhere, and that we will see the best of Themba Bavuma, especially in the closing parts of this competition.
No, for sure. It's kind of Don saying, I feel for Riza, though, he has been on form for a while. Absolutely. I fully agree with that comment. He's one of the players that has just been unlucky. You know, for me, I think he should have. I mean, he's pretty old already. If you look at his age, but what a player! I've always rated him, and he's just he produces the goods. And I'm not too sure what his average is. You know, in the one day format or even the T20 format. But yes, I agree, Colin, and I think he's a real run getter, and he's shown that for many. It's just certain forms. You get Riley Rousseau coming into the team, and Riley's been playing brilliant. You can't deny Riley Rousseau. He's always been a good player. I think from a couple of years ago before he left, him and Colin Ingram, they formed a brilliant new pairing that came onto the scene at a certain point. But yeah, he's a fantastic talent, Riza, and hopefully gets the opportunity to do that. And again, you look at yourself, you think, you put Riza in instead of a Temba, but you take break. What spirit would you break taking Temba out of the squad? But yeah, it's one of the unfortunate things for Riza.
Now, I think that was exactly the case. I think it would have come down for the selectors. They would have. That would have been the selection.
Yeah.
It would have been between Riza and Temba. That was, unfortunately, if you look at Riza's record, I think it was against England where he scored in all innings. He went to half centuries in the shorter format of the game. And I'm pretty sure when they needed to make this selection, it came down to that selection specifically.
Yeah.
There was never going to be space for both of them. And unfortunately, sentiment, captaincy, and obviously leadership way slightly heavier. But Riza certainly very unlucky. With the numbers he's knocking now, the form is in. He should have been there, but obviously.
100%. But let's also take a minute just to give it up to Wayne Parnell, guys. I mean, Wayne Parnell, wow, is really, I almost want to say, matured in his game. He's played he's bowled some fantastic overs. He gets to wicket. His line is much better. He just has this sense. And besides the fact we know that he can bat, he's a fantastic all-rounder, I think. Bowling, then more bowling and batting, of course. But Wayne Parnell has really, over the last couple of games for the Proteas, really come good.
Yeah, he's grown a lot in his role, and I can see that he's matured a lot. He fully understands his strengths and his weaknesses, where he needs to be, especially in terms of the areas that he needs to bowl. Early in his career, he had a mixed bag of 6 balls, and it can just disappear anywhere. And I think he's been more consistent. He's really been very economical, especially in the shorter version. And then and when you need him to get that odd wicket, he gets away to get the big batsman out. So certainly a very good asset for the Proteas now. And we're seeing the best of Wayne Parnell now. I think he's been a good 100%. Youngster coming through the age group levels, but he's never been consistently part of the Proteas side. Now, perhaps not in a prolonged position but in the short term, like you said, it's been a few very good performances after one another, and really is certainly a merit selection in the side at present.
100%. And I think we're not going to do any predictions now. We'll wait until the Proteas get a bit later, and then we'll give our predictions as to where they'll end up. Guys, if you are watching and you do have Faf du Plessis' number, please send it to us. We'd like to get his thoughts on. I just saw Colin and Don, and I thought of his comments on Daryl Cullinan this week. But please, if you guys know Faf, seriously, no one also be show. Let's get him. Let's get his book highlighted on the show. I think it'd be good to hear what his thoughts are on certain things. He probably won't give too much away because he wants us to buy the book. But Faf, if you are listening, please, we'd love to have you on the show, and I think a lot of viewers would love to see to be able to engage with him. But very sticky comments that he mentioned about Daryl Cullinan this week. But it's not surprising though, from the reputation that he's built up over the last couple of years.
Yeah, but so let's try hard enough. Let's see what we can do. Perhaps we're lucky, and we'll chat. We're not saying next week, but hopefully we'll get Faf, even if it's just in a video to us, to just give us some more insight about his book, but also try and get him to predict how far would he think this Proteas side can go in this T20 World Cup. Guys, thanks for tuning in. I think we had a good chat. It's almost an hour's time that we had a good chat. Pretty sure that some of the guys that's online would have thought 8 o'clock was the mense, but we've made it. We started at 8:30. Unfortunately, if stage 4 load shedding continues on my side, I am impacted just up until after 8 o'clock, and we won't be able to broadcast. So let's hope we get this load shedding under the thumb, and we can then get into that usual slot. We will probably have a chat with you online on our Facebook and our Twitter pages throughout for the URC, for the Premier League. So let's have a chat on social media, Alberic, and let's see what the people have to say, especially now that the Manchester United supporters, they are doing so well. We want to hear from you. There you have it. You can subscribe to our show on YouTube. Make sure that you do subscribe, and you'll get all those notifications on time changes of our show. And you can also follow us at Tekkel Chat on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. There you have it. Alberic, it was always nice to chat with you. And then certainly we're hoping that your side, the Stormers, do come good against the Lions this weekend. And who knows, perhaps we are also going to witness an upset for the Lions at home against the Stormers. Let's hope. But until next time, guys, thanks for tuning in. Keep those comments coming, and make sure that you do interact with us, and we will chat to you next week, Thursday, same time, same place. Until then, cheerio.